Jake Morrison wiped his dirty hands on an old cloth as the sun began to set over Luna Station. The repair dock was quiet now after another long day of fixing broken ships. Jake had been working here for 5 years, and he knew every bolt and wire in the place. Most days brought the usual problems: burned-out engines, cracked hulls, and systems that stopped working for no good reason. Luna Station sat far from the busy center of the galaxy, where the big alien governments ruled everything. Out here on the edge of space, different species brought their damaged ships when they needed real repairs. The fancy automated repair stations in the inner systems could fix most problems, but sometimes you needed human hands to make things work right again. Jake was packing up his tools when he heard the sound of engines struggling to stay running. He looked up to see a ship limping toward his dock. The vessel was beautiful even in its damaged state. Its hull shined with expensive metals that caught the station lights. The design was clearly Valtharian, all smooth curves and perfect lines that spoke of serious money. The ship landed hard on the dock platform. Steam rose from overheated engines, and Jake could see scorch marks along the sides. Someone had been shooting at this ship, and recently too. The pilot who stepped out wore a dark hooded cloak that hid her face completely. She moved carefully, like someone who expected trouble at any moment. "I need repairs," she said. Her voice carried the educated accent of Valtharian nobility, but something else too. Fear, maybe, or exhaustion. "Can you help me?" Jake nodded and walked closer to examine the ship. His trained eye caught details that most people would miss. The scorch marks were from military-grade weapons. Several hull patches had been applied quickly during flight. The engine modifications were expensive, but also desperate. The kind of changes someone made when they were running from something dangerous. "What happened to her?" Jake asked, running his hand along a damaged plasma conduit. The hooded woman hesitated. "Pirates," she said finally. "They attacked us near the Kepler belt." Jake knew she was lying, but he did not say anything. The damage patterns were all wrong for a pirate attack. Pirates wanted to capture ships intact to sell them. This damage came from someone trying to destroy the vessel completely. But everyone had secrets, and Jake had learned not to ask too many questions. "I can fix her," Jake said. "Will take about 3 days, maybe 4. Depends what I find when I open her up." "How much?" the woman asked. "Depends on what needs doing, but I don't take payment until the work is done right." The woman stared at him through her hood. "Most mechanics want credits up front before they even look at a ship." Jake shrugged. "Most mechanics haven't seen what I've seen. This ship has been through hell. Someone who flies like this either has very good reasons or very bad enemies. Either way, I fix the ship first and worry about payment later." The woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "My name is Elena. When can you start?" "Right now, if you want. I've got nothing else planned tonight." Jake opened his toolbox and began his examination. The ship was even more damaged than it looked from outside. Someone had really wanted this. Vessel destroyed. The main engines were barely holding together. The navigation system had been hit by some kind of electromagnetic pulse. The life support was running on backup power. Elena watched him work with unusual interest. Most customers dropped off their ships and disappeared until the work was done. But she stayed close, asking questions about human engineering methods. She seemed surprised by how Jake approached each problem. "Why do you do it that way?" she asked, when Jake jury-rigged a temporary fix for the damaged power coupling. "Because. Sometimes the bookway doesn't work," Jake explained while his hands moved quickly with tools and wires. "See this coupling here? It's designed to work perfectly under perfect conditions, But nothing in space is ever perfect, so I make it work under bad conditions instead. Elena tilted her head. That seems inefficient. Jake laughed. Maybe, but it works. That's what matters. As the hours passed, Jake found himself enjoying Elena's company. She was clearly educated and intelligent, but not arrogant like most wealthy aliens he had met. She asked good questions and listened carefully to his answers. When Jake offered her coffee from his old machine, she accepted gratefully. "You don't have to stay," Jake told her around midnight. "I've got sleeping quarters here. Can work through the night if needed." "I prefer to stay with my ship," Elena said. Old habit. Jake understood. When you were running from something, you did not let your only escape route out of sight. He had felt that way himself once upon a time. By dawn, Jake had the life support fully operational and the engine stable. The navigation system would need new parts, but he could fabricate those in his workshop. The hull patches would hold until he could do proper repairs. Elena had fallen asleep in the passenger compartment, still wearing her hooded cloak. Jake worked quietly so he would not wake her. She looked tired even in sleep, and he wondered what kind of trouble had brought her to his little repair dock so far from civilization. When Elena woke up, she found Jake welding a new support beam into place. Sparks flew from his torch as he worked. She watched him for several minutes before speaking. "You're very good at this," she said. Jake turned off his torch and lifted his welding mask. 20 years of practice. Started working on ships when I was 15. Why do you work out here instead of the inner systems? You could make more money there." Jake considered the question. "Money isn't everything. Out here I can work the way I want to work. Fix things the right way instead of the fast way. Help. People who really need help instead of rich folks who just want their ships to look shinier." Elena was quiet for a moment. "That's an unusual philosophy. Maybe, but it works for me." As Jake returned to his welding, Elena pulled her hood back slightly. In the bright sparks from his torch, Jake caught a glimpse of silver hair and pale blue skin. Definitely Valtharian nobility. But there was something else, too. A birthmark or tattoo on her forehead that looked familiar somehow. Jake kept working and pretended he had not seen anything. Everyone deserved their privacy, especially people who were running from trouble. He would fix her ship and send her safely on her way. That was what he did. But deep down, Jake had a feeling that this job was going to be different from all the others. 3 days passed as Jake worked on Elena's ship. Each morning she brought him coffee and watched him repair the damaged systems. Each evening they talked about space travel and engineering while Jake cleaned his tools. Elena seemed genuinely interested in how human technology differed from alien designs. "Your methods are so different," Elena observed on the 3rd day. She was sitting on a cargo crate watching Jake install a new navigation computer. "Valtharian engineers would never mix systems like that." Jake looked up from his work. "That's because Valtharian engineers think everything has to be perfect, but perfect doesn't always work in the real world." "What do you mean?" Jake pointed to the jury-rigged connection he had made between the navigation system and the backup power supply. "See this? A Valtharian engineer would say it's wrong because it doesn't match the original design. But it works better than the original because it can adapt when things go bad." Elena studied the connection. "It does seem more flexible." "Exactly. Humans learned a long time ago that you can't plan for everything. So we build things that can handle problems we never thought of." As Jake worked, he noticed Elena watching his hands more than his explanations. When he caught her staring, she would look away quickly. There was something different about her today. She seemed nervous-like. She was building up courage to say something important. Around noon, Jake was replacing a damaged plasma conduit when Elena finally spoke up. "Jake, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Why do you trust me? You don't know anything about me. I could be a criminal or a spy or worse." Jake set down his tools and looked at her. "Could be, but you're not." "How do you know?" "Because criminals don't worry about whether their mechanics trust them, and spies don't ask questions about engineering philosophy. You're someone in trouble who needs help. That's enough for me." Elena was quiet for several minutes. Jake went back to his work, thinking the conversation was over. Then she reached up and slowly pulled back her hood. Jake nearly dropped his plasma welder. Elena's silver hair fell around, her shoulders catching the light like metal threads. Her skin was the pale blue of pure Valtharian nobility, but it was the intricate crown-shaped birthmark on her forehead that made Jake's blood run cold. He had seen that mark before on news. Feeds broadcast across the galaxy. Every sentient being in known space would recognize it. "You're Elena Voss," Jake said quietly. Elena nodded. "Daughter of Chancellor Marcus Voss, the richest person in the galaxy, and according to official records, I died 6 months ago in a terrorist attack." Jake set down his tools carefully. Marcus Voss controlled the Valtharian Trade Consortium, which managed commerce for half the known galaxy. His wealth was beyond imagination. His daughter had been all over the news when she was supposedly killed. "The attack was real," Elena continued, "but it wasn't terrorists who wanted me dead." She told Jake the truth, and it was worse than he had imagined. Elena had discovered that her father and the rest of her family were involved in massive corruption. They were stealing money from trade, deals, selling weapons to criminal organizations, and even trafficking slaves from primitive worlds. "I found evidence of everything," Elena said. "Documents, recordings, financial records. Enough to bring down not just my family, but dozens of other corrupt officials throughout the galaxy." When Elena had threatened to expose the corruption, her own family had decided she was too dangerous to live. They arranged the terrorist attack to kill her, but Elena had escaped at the last moment. She had been running ever since. "Every assassin, bounty hunter, and mercenary in the galaxy has a price on my head," Elena said. "My own family wants me dead. The government wants me silenced. Criminal organizations want revenge for the deals I could expose." Jake understood now why she had come to Luna Station. Human space was considered primitive and unimportant by most galactic powers. No one would think to look for the richest heiress in the galaxy hiding in a human repair dock. "So why tell me?" Jake asked. Elena met his eyes. "Because in 3 days, you've shown me more genuine kindness than I've received in my entire life, and because I need help from someone I can trust." "What kind of help?" Elena activated a small device that projected a holographic display. It showed technical schematics that hurt Jake's eyes to look at. The mathematics were beyond anything he had studied. "The evidence I gathered is stored in my ship's quantum data core," Elena explained. "But it's protected by Valtharian quantum locks that will destroy everything if someone tries to access it improperly." Jake studied the display. The security system was incredibly complex. "What do you need me to do?" "The locks can only be opened from the Voss family estate on Valthara Prime. But the moment I set foot on that planet, I'm dead. I need another way to access the data." Jake examined the schematics more carefully. The quantum lock system was designed with typical Valtharian precision. Every component was perfectly calibrated. Every equation was balanced exactly. It was brilliant and completely impossible to break using conventional methods. But Jake was not thinking conventionally. "You know what your problem is?" Jake said after studying the display for an hour. "What?" "You're thinking like a Valtharian. All perfect mathematics and elegant engineering. But look at this quantum resonator here." Jake pointed to what seemed like a minor component. "It assumes the environment will be completely stable." Elena leaned closer. "Of course. Any interference would destabilize the entire system." "Exactly. But what if we don't try to crack the lock? What if we fool it instead?" Jake explained his idea. Instead of trying to break the quantum encryption, they would create a device that made the locks think they were being opened from the proper location. It would require controlled electromagnetic interference, carefully timed quantum fluctuations, and what Jake called mechanical intuition. "That's impossible," Elena said. "The mathematics don't work. The quantum states would collapse." "Maybe according to Valtharian math. But humans have been making impossible things work for centuries." Elena stared at him. "You really think you can do this?" "I think I can try. But I'll need parts and equipment I don't have here. Money is not a problem. I have access to accounts my family doesn't know about." Jake nodded. "Then let's get started." Over the next 2 days, Jake worked like he had never worked before. He fabricated components that shouldn't exist according to known physics. He wrote code that violated every programming principle he had learned. He built a device that looked like something assembled from junk, but contained mathematics that would make alien scientists weep. Elena watched every step of the process, asking questions and taking notes. She seemed amazed by Jake's approach to engineering problems. "How do you know this will work?" she asked as Jake made final adjustments. "I don't. But sometimes the best way to solve a perfect problem is to be perfectly imperfect." Jake activated his device and connected it to Elena's data core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the quantum locks began responding as if they were receiving signals from Valthara Prime itself. One by one, the security barriers fell away. Elena stared at the unlocked data files with tears in her eyes. "It worked. You actually did it." But their celebration was cut short. Elena's ship communication system suddenly lit up with incoming signals. Someone had found them. "We need to go," Elena said urgently. "Now!" Jake looked at his workshop and repair dock. Everything he had built. Over 5 years, his home, his life. Then he looked at Elena and made his choice. Jake grabbed his essential tools and ran toward Elena's ship as warning alarms echoed through Luna Station. The incoming signals were getting stronger, which meant whoever was tracking them would arrive soon. Elena was already in the pilot's seat, starting up the engines when Jake jumped aboard. 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace, Elena reported as she read the sensor displays. "Valtharian hunter-killers, military-grade weapons and armor." Jake strapped himself into the co-pilot seat as Elena launched them away from the station. Through the view screen, he could see 3 sleek warships materializing from the blue glow of hyperspace. They were beautiful and deadly, like everything the Valtharians built. "Can we outrun them?" Jake asked. Elena shook her head. "Not in a straight chase. But your repairs made this ship faster than it was before. Maybe we can outmaneuver them." The first missiles were already streaking toward them. Elena threw the ship into a spinning dive that would have crushed a normal person against the walls. But Jake had reinforced the inertial dampeners during his repairs, and they barely felt the acceleration. "Nice work on the stabilizers," Elena said as she dodged another missile barrage. "Thank my grandfather. He taught me that smooth flying is dead flying." Elena laughed despite their situation. Your grandfather was a smart man. The chase continued for 20 minutes with Elena using every trick she knew to stay ahead of their pursuers. But the hunter-killers were gaining ground. Soon, they would be close enough to use their main weapons, which could destroy Elena's ship in one shot. "We need somewhere to hide," Elena said. "Somewhere they can't follow." Jake studied the navigation display. They were approaching the asteroid belt of the Kepler system, where he had salvaged parts many times before. The asteroids were dense and full of metal ore that would interfere with sensors, but they would also interfere with their own navigation. "Head for the belt," Jake said. "I know a place." Elena looked at him. "Are you crazy? Flying through that at this speed will get us killed." "Trust me." Elena hesitated for only a moment, then changed course toward the asteroids. The hunter-killers followed, confident they could track their prey even in the belt. As they entered the asteroid field, Jake took over navigation. His hands moved over controls he had modified during the repairs. The ship responded to his touch like it was reading his mind. "How are you doing this?" Elena asked, as Jake threaded them between asteroids the size of small moons. "I spent 2 years salvaging in this belt. Know every rock and debris field. Plus, I made some improvements to your navigation system." Jake guided them deeper into the belt than any sane pilot would go. The hunter-killers followed, but they were having trouble with the sensor interference. Their perfect Valtharian systems were not designed for this kind of chaotic environment. "There," Jake pointed to what looked like a solid asteroid. "Fly straight at it." "Jake, that's suicide. Trust me." Elena aimed the ship at the asteroid. At the last second, Jake activated a hidden scanner he had built into the navigation system. The asteroid revealed itself to be hollow, an ancient mining station long abandoned and forgotten. They flew inside just as the first hunter-killer rounded the asteroid. To their sensors, Elena's ship had simply disappeared. Inside the hollow asteroid, Jake guided them to a landing platform that still had emergency power. Elena shut down all systems except life support, making them invisible to any scans. "How did you know this was here?" Elena whispered. "Found it 3 years ago when I was looking for rare metals. Been using it as a supply depot ever since." They waited in the darkness, listening to their hunters search the asteroid field. The hunter-killers spent hours scanning every rock, but they never found the hidden entrance to the old mining station. Finally, the enemy ships gave up and jumped back to hyperspace. "They'll be back," Elena said, "with more ships and better sensors." Jake nodded. "Then we need to finish this fast. Show me those data files." Elena activated her quantum core and displayed the evidence she had gathered. Jake had never seen anything like it. Financial records showing trillions of credits stolen from trade deals. Video recordings of Valtharian officials meeting with known criminals. Documents proving that slave ships operated with government protection. "This isn't just corruption," Jake said. "This is organized crime on a galactic scale." "My father controls it all," Elena said bitterly. "The Trade Consortium was supposed to bring peace and prosperity to the galaxy. Instead, it became a tool for exploitation and murder." Jake studied the files more carefully. "We need to get this information to someone who can do something with it. But who can we trust? The Galactic Council, maybe? Or the independent press? Service? Both controlled by people your father has probably bought," Jake pointed out. "We need someone with real power who can't be intimidated or bribed." Elena was quiet for a moment. "There is someone. Admiral Lisa Carter of the Earth Defense Fleet. She's been trying to investigate trade consortium activities for years but never had enough evidence. Jake knew Admiral Carter by reputation. She was one of the few human military officers who had earned respect throughout the galaxy. More importantly, she was known for her integrity and her hatred of corruption. How do we reach her? We go to Earth. But that means traveling through the core systems where security is tightest. Jake looked at Elena's ship with new eyes. The repairs he had made were good, but not good enough for what they needed to do. If they were going to reach Earth, alive, they would need every advantage he could give them. We're going to modify this ship, Jake said. Really modify it. Strip out everything we don't need and rebuild it for speed and stealth. That will take days. Then we better get started. Jake worked for 3 straight days with Elena helping. However she could. He ripped out the luxury fittings and fancy decorations. He replaced the elegant Valtharian power systems with human-designed fusion reactors that were smaller but more efficient. He installed sensor jammers that used controlled static to confuse enemy targeting computers. Most importantly, he rebuilt the navigation system from scratch using human adaptive programming. Instead of calculating perfect flight paths like Valtharian computers, the new system would constantly adjust to changing conditions. It's not as precise as your old system, Jake explained to Elena, but it's much better at handling surprises. When he was finished, the ship looked nothing like the luxury cruiser it had been. The hull was now dark gray to absorb sensor beams. The engine nacelles had been repositioned for better maneuverability. The whole vessel looked dangerous and ready for trouble. "She's not pretty anymore," Elena said sadly. "No, but she'll get us to Earth alive." Elena smiled. "Then let's go save the galaxy." As they prepared to leave the hidden asteroid base, Jake made final checks on all his modifications. Everything was working perfectly. The ship was faster, stealthier, and more maneuverable than ever before. But as they lifted off, Elena received an urgent message on her private communication channel. The message was from her younger brother Kevin, who she thought was loyal to their father. "Elena, you have to stop," the message said. "Father knows where you're going. He's got ships waiting at every jump point to Earth. Please come home. We can work this out as a family." Elena stared at the message with tears in her eyes. "He's my little brother. I taught him to fly when he was 12. Jake put a hand on her shoulder. "He's trying to save your life the only way he knows how. But we both know there's no going back." Elena deleted the message and set course for Earth. "Then we go through them. Or around them," Jake said with a smile. "I've got some ideas about that." As they jumped to hyperspace, Jake began planning their approach to Earth. The Valtharians would expect them to take the standard shipping routes. They would have every official jump point covered with warships. But Jake knew about the unofficial routes that smugglers and salvagers used. Dangerous paths through unstable hyperspace that could destroy a ship if navigated incorrectly. Paths that required human instinct and adaptability to survive. It was time to show the galaxy what human engineering could really do. The journey toward Earth took 2 weeks, using the dangerous smuggler routes that Jake knew from his salvaging days. Elena proved to be an excellent pilot once she learned to trust the ship's new adaptive systems. She stopped trying to fly perfectly and started flying smart. "The key is not to fight the hyperspace currents," Jake explained as they navigated a particularly unstable region. "Let the ship feel its way through like water finding the easiest path." Elena nodded and relaxed her grip on the controls. Immediately, their flight became smoother as the ship's sensors adjusted to the changing conditions around them. They encountered 3 Valtharian patrol fleets during the journey, but Jake's modifications worked perfectly. The sensor jammers made them nearly invisible, while the adaptive navigation system found paths through space that military computers said were impossible. "Your ship is learning," Jake observed as they slipped past another patrol. "The navigation system is getting better at predicting safe routes." "How is that possible?" "Human programming adapts and grows. Valtharian programming just follows orders." As they got closer to Earth, Elena became more nervous. She had never been to the human home world before, and everything she had heard suggested it was a primitive backwater planet. "What if Admiral Carter won't see us?" Elena asked. "What if she thinks this is some kind of trap?" "Then we find another way," Jake said. "But she'll see us. This evidence is too important to ignore." When they finally dropped out of hyperspace, near Earth, Elena stared in amazement at what she saw. The planet was surrounded by massive orbital stations that buzzed with activity. Cargo ships, passenger liners, and military vessels moved in carefully controlled patterns. The defense satellites were clearly visible as bright points of light forming protective rings around the world. "This doesn't look primitive," Elena said. Jake smiled. "Humans are good at making things look simpler than they really are." Their arrival had not gone unnoticed. Within minutes, they were surrounded by Earth Defense Fleet patrol ships. The human vessels were smaller than Valtharian warships, but they moved with deadly precision. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself immediately," came the radio challenge. Jake activated their communication system. "This is Jake Morrison requesting emergency meeting with Admiral Carter. I have Valtharian Trade Consortium corruption evidence that threatens galactic security." There was a long pause. Then a different voice came on the radio. "Jake Morrison, the mechanic from Luna Station, this is Commander Helen Rodriguez." "What the hell are you doing here?" Jake grinned. He had served with Helen Rodriguez during his brief military career 20 years ago. She had been a lieutenant then and one of the few officers who respected enlisted mechanics. "Hello, Helen. Long story, but I need to speak with the Admiral right away. This is bigger than you can imagine." "Stand by, Jake. I'm scrambling a security escort." 6 Earth Defense Fleet fighters formed up around Elena's ship and guided them toward the main orbital station. Elena watched the human pilots with professional interest. "They fly like you do," she observed. "Not perfect, but very effective. Human military doctrine is based on adaptability and innovation. We assume our enemies will be bigger and stronger, so we have to be smarter and faster." The orbital station was enormous, but Elena noticed it was built for function rather than beauty. Every surface had a purpose. Every system was designed to be repaired quickly under combat conditions. It was the complete opposite of elegant Valtharian architecture. Admiral Carter met them at the docking bay personally. She was a tall woman with gray hair and the kind of eyes that missed nothing. Elena felt nervous under her steady gaze. "Jake Morrison," the Admiral said. 20 years since you left the service and you show up with the supposedly dead daughter of Marcus Voss. This better be good." Jake handed her a data pad containing copies of Elena's evidence. Admiral Carter's expression grew darker as she read through the files. "Sweet Jesus," she whispered. "How long has this been going on?" "Decades, at least," Elena replied. "My father built his empire on corruption and crime. The Trade Consortium is just a front for the largest criminal organization in galactic history." Admiral Carter looked at Elena carefully. "Why should I trust you? For all I know, this is fake evidence designed to discredit legitimate Valtharian business interests." Elena had expected this question. She activated her personal identifier, which displayed her DNA signature and biometric data. There was no doubt about her identity. "Because I'm risking everything to expose this," Elena said. My own family wants me dead. I have nowhere to go and no one to trust except Jake." The Admiral studied Jake. "And why are you involved in this?" "Because it's the right thing to do. Elena came to me for help, and I gave it. Simple as that." Admiral Carter smiled slightly. "Same Jake Morrison, always making things sound simple when they're complicated as hell." She sealed the datapad in a secure container. "I'll need time to verify this evidence and coordinate with other agencies. Can you stay here for a few days?" "We don't have a few days," Elena said urgently. "My father's agents are searching for us everywhere. They'll find us soon," as if summoned. By her words, alarms began sounding throughout the station. A technician ran up to Admiral Carter with an urgent message. "Admiral, we have multiple Valtharian warships dropping out of hyperspace. 12 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. They're demanding we surrender Elena Voss immediately." Admiral Carter's expression hardened. "Tell them this is Earth space and they have no authority here. They say they have a legitimate warrant for a wanted criminal and terrorist." Elena felt her heart sink. "They found us." Jake looked at Admiral Carter. "You know this evidence is real. Are you going to let them take her?" The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, studying both of them. Finally, she activated her command communicator. "All stations, this is Admiral Carter. Battle stations, raise shields and prepare for combat. No foreign warships will take custody of anyone under Earth protection." Elena stared at her in amazement. "You're willing to fight the Valtharian fleet? For me? I'm willing to fight for the truth," Admiral Carter replied, "and for the principle that Earth doesn't bow to corrupt foreign powers." The space around Earth erupted into activity as Earth Defense Fleet ships moved to intercept the Valtharian force. The human fleet was outnumbered, but they had the advantage of fighting in their own system with orbital defenses to support them. "Elena," Admiral Carter said, "I need you to broadcast this evidence on all galactic frequencies. Let everyone see what your father has been doing." "That will make me a target forever." "You're already a target. This way you can at least make it count." Elena looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. She activated the station's main communication array and began transmitting the corruption files to every news service, government agency, and independent broadcaster in the galaxy. As the evidence spread across galactic networks, the Valtharian fleet found itself in an impossible position. They could not attack Earth without confirming the accusations against them, but they also could not retreat without appearing guilty. "This is Chancellor Marcus Voss," came a transmission from the Valtharian dreadnought. "Elena, you are my daughter. Come home and we can resolve this privately as a family." Elena activated her own communicator. "Father, I was your daughter until you tried to have me murdered. Now I'm just someone who knows the truth about what you really are." "Elena, please. You don't understand the complexities of governing a galactic trade network. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made. Difficult decisions like selling weapons to pirates, like trafficking slaves from primitive worlds, like stealing money meant to help disaster victims." Marcus Voss was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was cold and threatening. "You have made your choice, daughter. Live with the consequences." The Valtharian fleet turned and jumped back to hyperspace, leaving Elena standing on an Earth station, surrounded by the wreckage of her old life. Admiral Carter put a hand on Elena's shoulder. "You did the right thing." Elena looked at Jake, who had stood by her through everything. "What happens now?" "Now we change the galaxy," Jake said simply. "Together." 6 months after Elena's evidence broadcast, everything across the galaxy had changed. The Valtharian Trade Consortium collapsed within weeks as member worlds withdrew their support. Criminal networks that had operated under consortium protection were raided by law enforcement agencies throughout known space. Marcus Voss and hundreds of other corrupt officials were arrested and faced trial for crimes against multiple species. Elena stood in the garden of their new home on the neutral world of Haven, watching the news reports on her personal communicator. Every day brought fresh revelations about the scope of the corruption they had exposed. Every day also brought new threats from the remaining criminal organizations who blamed her for destroying their operations. "Still watching the news?" Jake asked as he joined her on the garden terrace. He was wearing simple work clothes and had grease under his fingernails from his morning in their workshop. "Force of habit," Elena replied. "It's hard to believe we really did it." Jake sat beside her on the stone bench they had built together. "You did it. I just fixed your ship." Elena laughed. "You did a lot more than fix my ship, Jake Morrison, and you know it." Their home on Haven was modest by the standards Elena had grown up with, but it was theirs. Jake had designed it himself using human construction techniques adapted for the local environment. The house was efficient and comfortable with large windows that looked out over rolling hills covered in native flowers. Haven was a perfect choice for their new life. The planet had been established as a neutral refuge for people who needed to disappear from galactic politics. No extradition treaties, no military alliances, no questions asked about the past. The local government was committed to protecting the privacy and safety of all residents. "The Galactic Council voted today," Elena said, reading from her communicator. "They're establishing new oversight committees for all trade organizations. Independent inspectors with the authority to investigate corruption anywhere in member space." "About time," Jake said. "Think it will work?" Elena shrugged. "Maybe. Probably not perfectly, but it's better than what we had before." The evidence Elena had released had done more than just destroy the trade consortium. It had changed how the galaxy thought about corruption and accountability. Worlds that had been exploited for decades were now demanding reparations. Criminal organizations found, their political protection disappearing. Most importantly, ordinary citizens across the galaxy were asking harder questions about their leaders. "Admiral Carter sent another message," Elena said. "The Earth Defense Fleet wants to hire you as a consultant. Help them adapt human engineering, techniques for their new ship designs." Jake considered this. "What do you think?" "I think you would be bored to death working for a military."